Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Zone to Speak podcast. I'm your host, Juliana. Hi, everyone. At Zone to Speak, I know how important it is to stay healthy, strong, and ready for every ride, workout, and adventure. That's why I have got exclusive discounts on some of my favorite products designed specifically for athletes like you. Psych Plus. Their smart pump is a game changer, compact, efficient, reliable, and perfect for keeping your tires road and gravel ready. Plus, they have radar tail lights, smart trainers, smart fans, and more. Get 10% off the smart pump and 5% off everything else. 35% off Frey Skincare. Skincare made for athletes, designed for skin that sweats. Their all-natural, vegan, and cruelty-free products keep your skin protected and fresh. I have been using Frey for years and I love it. 10% off Cold Age. Premium vitamins and supplements to fuel your body, speed up recovery, and help you ride longer. I personally take the Women's Fermented Vitamin and Creatine, both powder and capsules. 10% Clearly Not Coffee, the ultimate coffee alternative made from functional ingredients to fuel your focus and energy without the caffeine crash. Try it out. 15% off Omri supplements. Whether you are training, recovering, or pushing for peak performance, their high-quality supplements have you covered. And there's something special from me, your host. As a certified integrative health nutrition expert and holistic life coach, I am thrilled to offer all my listeners 25% off personalized nutrition and life coaching with Genki Wellness. If you want to optimize your health or simply feel your best, head to bemoregenki.com and use the code ZONE2SPEAK. For all the discounts, check the episode description for the links and use Zone to Speak code at checkout. And let these amazing products support your health and performance. Now, let's get into the episode. Welcome back to Zone to Speak. On this episode, I sit down with John Wakefield, Managing Director of Science to Sport and Director of Development at Bora-Hansgrohe. John has spent years at the forefront of high-performance cycling, working with some of the best athletes in the world. From his expertise in bike fitting, training, and sports science to developing young talent, he knows what it takes to turn riders into champions. John has also been part of some of the biggest moments in pro cycling, including his time at UAE Team Emirates, where he worked closely with none other than Tadej Pogačar, helping him on his way to back-to-back Tour de France victories. I will dive into what it takes to win the biggest race in the world twice, the mindset of a champion, and the evolution of the sport from the inside. So let's get into it. Welcome to Zone to Speak, John.
Thank you for having me. Yeah, it's a pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you for fitting us into your busy schedule.
No, it's a pleasure.
So tell me, how was working with Tadej Pogačar behind the scenes? Is he what makes him so special compared to other riders?
Obviously, from a physiological point, he obviously has some special attributes. But if you just take it as a person, yes, obviously very professional in what he does, his application to his job, if you want to call it that. But he's also a really good human being, so from that side, I think that carries over his fun factor, his, how he treats people, how he looks at people, and in that environment, I think, that helps him have a really good support system around him and have people want to support him. And also at the same time, it helps you as whatever you're doing, whether you help him from the Sonia side as a masseuse or whether you are managing him, it definitely creates an environment where you yourself have to bring out the best in yourself, to be able to apply whatever big or small factor that you need to bring to that environment. But he's a really easygoing guy. Definitely what you see is what you get with him.
Yeah, I mean, he's so charismatic. You can't help but love the guy. Because
Yeah.
we have had so many champions that have a fan base, obviously, but they're the haters. But no one can say anything about Tadej. I mean, he's just so
Yeah.
lovable,
Yeah, I
right?
think, if you had to find something to, hate is a strong word, but dislike about him is that, he wins a lot. I think
Yeah,
that would be
exactly. Stop
be your
winning.
worst thing. Yeah, stop winning, you know.
Come on.
Give somebody else a chance, So I think if you
Yeah.
really had to go, find one negative, I suppose that's what it would be.
And I think you were with the UAE Emirates team when he was young talent. When did the team realize he was capable of winning the Tour de
Um,
France?
Yeah, so you knew he was capable of winning, and this is just my personal experience, was when he won Algarve in 2019. I remember it was the final climb, and Alaphilippe had gone up the road, and it caused panic, obviously, because it was Alaphilippe. And what also comes down to his nature, he was very calm, and he just rode his own pace, and he landed up winning. He didn't lose enough time. He didn't win the stage, but he definitely clawed back the time that he lost, and he won the stage. And then you knew. Then he went to Tour of California, and then he went to the Vuelta and he won 2 stages and he finished third in his first Grand Tour. Then that was sort of your end result of knowing, okay, there's definitely something very special here. He went to the Tour that next year. It wasn't to win. In 2020, we had a different goal. It was top 5, possibly a podium. But by the second rest day, or your final rest day, was when we kind of, it was a little bit evident is, hey, we could possibly win this. And a lot goes into that, but that's when a little bit that switch kind of got turned on, and it was, hey, we can maybe have a really good go at this.
And how intense was when he started to win? How intense was the pressure leading up to winning Tour de France?
Um, Yeah, so on that 2020 tour, it wasn't a huge pressure value to win. It was more to go out and do the best you can. But as I said, from that second rest day was, okay, we can give this a go, but there wasn't pressure to win it. The pressure, I would say, is probably came naturally upon
After.
himself. But there wasn't really pressure from the team to say, okay, well, it's, going into the final week, you have to win this. But obviously that final day of the TT, which is, almost historical on how that happened, there was obviously a lot of nerves and pressure going on that day. So
And how it is managing such a young talent, not just today, but in general, because you work with a lot of top athletes.
um, yeah, the youngsters, if you want to call it now, are, what I think is definitely lost is that, you're still sitting with a very young 18, 19, 20-year-old personality, but you want them to perform like an adult. So that judging, or not judging, but that sort of balance between, yes, you're dealing with a kid, and I say that respectfully, but you want a top level seasoned athlete in terms of physiology and performance. So it's in some cases it's a very delicate and busy management schedule around a kid like that, because they are fragile, possibly mentally. Yes, they have the physiological attributes, but mentally they're just not there. They've never left home. They've never experienced the world, and then you're asking them to go on the road for possibly 130 days of the year, living out of hotels, having high pressure volume. It's definitely a work in progress. Some of them fall naturally into it, but then some of them you really need to kind of have a very slow development process on that.
Yeah, all that you said. And also, the other thing that I think about is also the media, because they have to deal with the media and answer
Yeah.
questions, and it can't be easy.
No, and there's also obviously expectations, especially now with everything is younger and younger. It's like, okay, this guy's come in, it's whatever, Michael Smith, and he's come in and he's expected to win. And if he possibly doesn't win or do as well as what the general public expected him to do, then there's a lot of scrutiny on why and how. And when you start scrutinizing young kids or young minds, it can potentially go the other way and you never see them again.
Yeah, yeah. So you are director of development at Bora-Hansgrohe now. What is that role like?
Yeah, in a nutshell, it's actually a really good role. I'm enjoying it. There's many different aspects to it. So there's obviously the performance side, but there's also the human side, and then there's the business side of creating an actual development program. So it's kind of quite a few hats. Also learned that I need to now deal with staff, many staff and personalities. But in saying that, the outcome essentially is to identify young talent, so that 15, 16, 17, 18-year-old category, and develop them into, whether it's a classics winner, whether it's by 2030, a Tour de France champion, etc. And that is sort of the goal and process of what that project is.
Wow, that's really
Yeah.
cool. And are there any specific qualities or mindsets that you are looking for that separate good writers from future stars?
Yeah, our scouting program, I would say, is pretty rigorous, and not just saying it because it's ours, but I do believe that we're really on the forefront of what we do with regards to that and protocols. So it's looking at everything from the mental stability, the mental focus, the mental age of an athlete, to obviously physiological, in terms of, do we believe that this athlete can develop? Are they at a very good, are they too high a level now? Is there room for that development? And obviously everything from mental injury processes, etc. So it's quite a robust scouting application that we do with athletes. So it's not just looking at them going, oh, this rider's getting really good results and he has really good power. Yes, it's an important factor, but it's not everything.
Got it. Yeah, I think the only little window that most of us see on scouting talent is the Swift Academy on
Yeah,
YouTube.
sure. Correct. So that definitely is one area that you do try identify riders on, but it goes obviously all the way to speaking to agents. We have scouts that go to races, etc. So it's not just one specific thing.
Okay. Okay. So you guys go like you're saying you have scouts, you go like to crit races and other road races around the
Yeah,
globe.
around the world. Yeah, correct.
Okay, cool. Any success stories that you have witnessed in this talent development that you could share?
I would probably say Florian Lipovitz is one of them. He also came a little bit from outside the normal cycling mold. He came from like skimo and ski touring and stuff, and started riding a bicycle a little bit late as well. And the team had identified him, kind of got him onto the team and signed him after a bit of a process. And really successfully. Won some week-long stage races. He did his first Grand Tour now in August, and he finished 7th overall on GC. So for him, if I say, from one of the ones that stand out, I feel that is definitely one of them, especially
And
from
do
an
you,
unconventional cycling approach.
Mm. And do you think he's one of the other ones besides Roglic that you see as a GC in big tours?
Yeah, definitely. And also the kind of longer 5, 7, 8 day stage races, like hypothetically a Dauphiné, Torino, Adriatico, etc.
And I don't. I sorry, I don't know when you joined Bora-Hansgrohe, but have you seen any change since Red Bull joined the team?
Yeah, I joined the team for the 2023 season, so
Okay.
23, 24. And so yes, there's definitely changes that had come. There was nothing that the team was really good before, but you have sort of limitations on what we had access to and what we could do. And with Red Bull, we've now broadened that scope, and we've been able to get access, or a knowledgeable base that we didn't really potentially were able to to have before. So, when you combine both of those parties together, it's really been fantastic so far.
Wonderful. Wonderful.
Yeah.
So let's talk a little bit about coaching.
Yes.
What have worked with some of the world top riders that you have worked with some of the top cyclists in the world? What drew you into coaching?
I don't actually know. It wasn't really coaching itself. I had quite a bad motocross accident, and I had to do quite extensive rehabilitation from it. And while I was doing the rehabilitation, I was like, as weird as it sounded, but although I didn't get on with the gentleman that was doing my rehabilitation, we definitely clashed on the personality. I really was inspired by what he knew and what he did with me to get me back. And I was just like, this is what I want to do. But I didn't really know what, but it was more that environment. And because of the injury that I had, I couldn't race motocross anymore. And a friend of mine said, "Oh, would you just kind of help coach me or train me?" Essentially is what it was. Because I enjoyed the training aspect of sport a little bit more than the actual racing side of it. And from that, it grew very big on the motocross side. I raced a mountain bike and I raced a road bike. And then I met another gentleman and who's my business partner. And he said to me, "Oh, what about doing cycling coaching?" And I was like, "Okay, let's see what it's about." And then here I am today. So that's 20 years later. That's where I am today.
Awesome. And look what have you done? I mean, how many victories, how many talent you have developed. It's incredible.
So that's sort of how it happened. It happened from a broken back and a broken leg, and here I am today.
Wow. And what do you think about amateurs copying what pros are doing? One example I have is when it came out that Pogačar was riding a 165 crank, everybody went out there wanting a 165 crank.
Yeah, they did, especially from our business in Girona. It became so there it's like, yes, you take knowledge, you understand, it's fantastic, and people want to better themselves, so I'm all in supportive for that. But and here's the but where it comes from, is that just because Tadej rides a 165 crank or he rides this saddle, it doesn't mean that it works for everyone. And that's what people don't understand. They see, oh, Tadej had X, Y, and Z, or Primož had X, Y, and Z improvement because he did this. It'll automatically apply to myself, where it doesn't. And what they don't understand is typically should Primož go to or any rider of that level go to a shorter crank, there's reasoning behind it and there's testing that had been done. They didn't just go to their bike shop and tell the guy to put a 165 crank on, so from that side, it's, if I just go on which is really a big thing that we have at the moment, especially in terms of from our biomechanical side at the company, is that everybody just wants shorter cranks now. And you kind of say to them, sure, we'll do this, but you do understand that it's not always going to come out in a positive outcome. And that's what people don't understand.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
And I was getting a new bike custom made around that time, and I am kind of little, and then I have a 165 crank and I couldn't find anything because it was all sold out.
Correct.
I'm like, that's my size, people. Leave the 165 crank away.
If it would have been great to get some pre-warning from that, and I would have bought a whole bunch of 165 cranks and made millions.
Yep.
Yeah.
And so that brings me to bike fitting. You have an awesome spot here in Girona, Science to Sport. You did my bike fit, and I'm so comfortable. It was the first time actually that I did a bike fitting with the saddle pressure.
Yes.
And
okay.
I think, I really loved it. So, and most people think, having a bike fit is not worth it. I mean, amateurs or people getting into the sport think, oh, it's so much money just to adjust my saddle height. but there's so much more that goes into it. Can you talk a little bit
Sure.
on the
It's
process?
So what you said is actually true. Is that people think, oh, I won't get a bike fit. I won't spend whatever the amount is on a good bike fit, but I'll go and spend like 7,000 euros on carbon fiber wheels, thinking I'll go better. Where
Yep.
you're saying, okay, but if you're uncomfortable or you have problems, but worst case scenario, you have some kind of medical problems because of a bad bike fit, your carbon wheels aren't really going to go that fast. So, from that side, what we do, and I can't speak for many other bike fitters around, but what we do is kind of a full system. So we take a physiological measurement from you. So first off, we take your medical history. So have you come from injuries? What are they? Where are you? If there have been injuries, processes, are you doing rehabilitation, etc., or if everything is fine? And then we go through, as I said, some physiological measurements like leg length, full leg length, upper lower leg length. We do flexibility, we do arm length, and we take a lot of your history into account. And then from that, obviously, is where we then start your bike fit process going forward from that. And yes, in today's times, aerodynamics is a very strong word. But what we obviously try to get you into is, yes, you want to have that aerodynamic point, but also aerodynamics, whether it's a road bike or a TT bike, is only as good as, or as good as you can hold that position for as long as you can. So if you can't really hold it for very long, there is no aerodynamics. That position goes away. So what we try to do is obviously have comfort. Your power delivery is good, and your economy on the bike is good, and that's what we look for. And
Yeah.
obviously, if you do have medical issues, it may be an ongoing process where while you get better or you are improving from the injury side, we adjust the bike as we go to that final position of what we want.
Yeah. No, I totally agree. I always say comfort is speed.
Yeah.
You just can't be super aggressive, and like you said, and then you cannot hold the position. You're uncomfortable, you're in pain, maybe you even get an injury. Is that possible? Yeah.
Yeah, correct,
So why?
definitely. So going back to that, it's you can have, hypothetically, if it's a TT bike, a CDA of say 0.16, but if you can't hold it, you land up having 0.19 anyway. So you land up going slower. So rather be powerful at 0.18 as an example, and be able to hold that position for the full duration of your TT effort.
Yeah. What are some of the top mistakes cyclists make with their bike fit?
Going too aggressive is definitely one of them. And then the other side is when they're trying to find a position, is what we find is that, say they feel, oh, I'm uncomfortable. They won't do a small change of one thing at any given time. So they'll lower the saddle as an example. They'll change the drop or the reach, and they'll put a different stem on, and they're doing 2, 3, 4 things at one time to try find that comfortable position. But the problem comes then is that which one was the right one and which one was the wrong one. So you kind of find out that they get really, and it's normal, they just get very lost in translation. So you don't know where the problem is coming from. So what we say is, if you're feeling a bit funny on the saddle, just make a change on the saddle. Don't do the front end, don't do the back, don't do all these changes in one go. And when you do changes, do very small changes at a time. Don't go from, unless it's, a super, super high saddle, but don't go from, change like 1 centimeter changes at a time. Do small increments, test it, see how it feels, and then make, if need be, make another change from there.
Yeah, that's good advice. It makes sense. Change one thing at a time and slowly.
Yeah.
Because then if you change everything, you don't know what improved or what got worse.
Yeah,
It would be
correct.
hard to tell.
Which is often the case. And when you speak to someone, you say, okay, what did you do? And they have like this phone book of changes they made out on the road, and you're like, okay, so now we need to start from day one again.
Yeah. You talked a little bit about aerodynamics. What role does it play in bike fitting on pro versus amateur? Is that a difference? Or it depends
Yes.
on the physiology of the rider?
it really kind of what you want out of the bike. So if I take a pro who is looking, for those small gains and their job revolves around this, yes, you try get that whatever sweet spot between what is aerodynamic and what is sustainable. If it's just a recreational cyclist, but maybe they do races and they competitive within that amateur environment, that outcome is the same of what you're trying to do, maybe at a lesser extent, just because of how their body is and what they're doing from a racing perspective, and their age comes into account. But then also all the way back to, if I take an amateur cyclist like myself, I just want to be comfy on the bike and be able to go ride, So from that side, it's very different to like a racing amateur or a racing pro, or just, someone that just likes to go ride their bike. So your fit is based around exactly that, on what their outcome is and what they would like and what is capable in terms of their body.
Yeah. I have I like to do endurance. So on my gravel bikes, for example, I have my handlebar much higher than my road bike,
Yeah, for
which is
sure.
a little bit more aggressive because I'm
Yeah,
shorter time when I go, up Els
yeah,
Angeles or something. It's just quicker
sure.
rides. Yeah.
Correct.
And how does a proper fit improve power output, endurance, and comfort? But especially on power.
Yeah, so on power, obviously, if you have an optimal position on your bike, your power delivery is better. Your application to power, and obviously your economy is better on the bike. So your time to exertion or your fatigue is less, and that's essentially coming down to coming down to what is definitely a more correct position versus something, as we've almost just said, that is not sustainable. So at the end of the day, if you can produce power for longer with less fatigue, that is your optimal position, or a optimal position.
And do different body types or flexibility levels require different fits?
Yeah, definitely. The more flexibility you have, you can go more aggressive on a bike. So because you have that range of motion, also saddle height comes into play. If you have a really tight set of hamstrings, you're also very limited in terms of what you can do with saddle height. Because if you have a high saddle, over time that hamstring wants to shorten, and the easiest way to shorten the hamstring, if it's not by the range, is by posteriorly rotating your pelvis. When you posterior rotate your pelvis, you shut off or limit hamstring and glute recruitment, which is one of your direct effects on power. So they
Yeah.
don't run a super high saddle if you have tight hamstrings. And then also you also do have kind of, if you're stretching the hamstring all the time, you do have some hamstring pain, etc.
Got it. Yeah. And I guess those warm ups and pre ride and mobility stretching post ride make also a huge difference for injury prevention.
Yeah, definitely post ride, and you want to have flexibility on a bike.
Yeah.
It is really important.
Have you seen any commonality in injuries caused by poor bike fit or lack thereof?
Yeah, there's quite a few. Obviously, one of the most common, I would say, injuries or discomforts that you have is saddle sores, especially if you're spending time on the bike. That is a very common injury or discomfort that we do find. And then it ranges everything from, lower back pain, shoulder pain, middle of your back pain, knee pain, in front and knee, in front and at the rear of the knee, femoral, patellofemoral pain, etc. So it ranges depending on kind of how that position that is on the bike affects the athlete. But yeah, there are definitely knock-on effects from injury prevention that you want to do by having a bad bike fit, or a fit that's not optimal.
Yeah, I had a problem before. It wasn't a bad bike fit. It was just me probably when I traveled, put the saddle maybe too high when putting the bike together again. And I was doing an ultra in Rwanda and had so much knee pain. But when you're in an ultra, the ultra brain doesn't function really well. And I don't know why I didn't think about the saddle position. But I was doing as a pair with my friend, who is a YouTuber, Juliet Elliott. And then looking at the videos, I was just like, oh my gosh, my saddle height, it's, yeah, I was like tiptoeing. So that did it.
Yeah, correct. And that is a common problem people have, is that, you know, if you are traveling with your bike, etc., and they put it together mainly on the saddle height side, it's common, you know, whether it's too low or it maybe drops down in travel, or, you know, whether you take your seat post out and you put it back. So there's an example. It's really important to kind of mark that however you feel you mark it, you know, whether you measure it with a tape measure on whatever angles and ranges you feel is good. It is really important to have, especially if you do travel often with your bike.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I'm kind of lucky because my bike is an extra small. So now when I travel, I try not to take the saddle out if possible. I'm like, don't touch my saddle. I'm so paranoid.
Yeah. It's something to be paranoid about, so it's good.
Yeah, yeah. Are there any difference between road, gravel, and mountain bike fits?
The way gravel racing, from a racing aspect, the way gravel has evolved now into how it is from an aggressive racing style, there's not a lot of difference between a road bike and a gravel bike. What is different is that your front end needs to be slightly less aggressive. From a handling aspect, you don't want it super twitchy or narrow. And also then, because you do spend slightly longer, you know, on the gravel side, especially for the, you know, compared to a World Tour race, etc. So you want it slightly more relaxed. But other than that, it's a very similar fit. The only difference that we have seen, which it's an odd one to me, is, and it's not in a big volume of people, but, you know, guys that are now wanting, you know, 36 narrow bars on a gravel bike because they think it's more aero, or they're running like, you know, aero helmets and socks and stuff like that on a gravel race, to me is super strange, because you're not really going to get the benefit of it. And if you're running, you know, 36 narrow bars, your handling goes to hell, you know. So from that side, that much I don't really understand on the very few that want to kind of translate that over from road to gravel. But the fitment itself is, you know, it's a very similar fitment, less 20%, 10%. And then obviously on a mountain bike, it is very different, just purely because of, you know, how mountain bike frames are positioning, etc. on the bike.
Makes sense. Yeah, on the gravel, I don't understand either, especially on the handling. If the bar is more narrow, it's more aggressive, right? When you're in and you are dealing with different terrain.
Yeah, it's more twitchy. The last thing I want to do is do some of those downhills on a 36 bar.
Oh, yeah. And how has technology changed the way bike fits are done today?
Yeah, quite a lot. You know, and something I always say is, you know, with all this technology, you can have the best technology in the world, but the fit always comes down to the person using that technology, you know. So you can take any technology, and if it's not understood, it's still going to be a not really an optimal fitment. So, you know, taking that, if we work it backwards, especially from a kinematics point, you know, you get really good values and additional stuff that you see with the kinematic cameras that you can't see obviously from a static value. But you want those two to always, on an optimal fit, is to correlate for what you see kinematically is what you see statically. And then also, you know, if we add in, as you had mentioned, you know, saddle pressure mapping, it's really important, you know, for us, you know, that is your last fine tuning that bike fitment to make sure, you know, you can say, fine, static and kinematics are really good, and on paper it's great, and the subject getting the fit says, oh, I feel really good. And then you do mapping and you realize, wow, I need to make, you know, one or two little small tweaks here to make it really optimal. and that to me is, when you combine all of it and you understand that technology correctly, your fitments are really a lot more detailed than what they were, when you used to just use a plumb line. And also bikes, in fairness, have changed a lot over the years, that, C-tube angle isn't the same across the board anymore. Different bikes, different C-tube angles, etc. So, it's really become, it's not just, slam the handlebar, raise the saddle, and away you go anymore. Racing has also changed. So as that happens, you have to adapt the fitment accordingly.
100%. Yeah, I'm a big fan of the pressure mapping. I loved the experience I had in your studio. Definitely made a huge change for me. But you're absolutely right. The knowledge, the person behind the technology doing the fit makes total difference. You need to understand who you are as a writer, your physiology, what are your goals, to adjust that to use the technology and not the other way around. Yeah.
Yeah.
What's one bike fit myth that drives you crazy?
165 cranks are the best. Yeah. At the moment, we've gone full circle. At the moment, that, to be honest with you, is probably one of our biggest, I would say, caveats at the moment, is that everyone thinks a shorter crank is better. And often it is, don't get me wrong, but there's often many cases where it's not, but everyone thinks it is. So, that is one of them. And the other one that we see a lot is, someone will buy the bike from the shop, or, buy a second-hand bike, and that stem is slammed. And that is really a really big problem, especially with how bikes are nowadays, is that, not every single one needs to be slammed. And the problem there comes in is, they have problems and they come in, and we try to do our best to make them optimal. But there's a point where you say, okay, well, we need to come up a centimeter, or even 2 centimeters, or even 5 millimeters. And because they bought the bike brand new and just slammed it in the shop, or bought a bike secondhand that slammed, you are completely limited in terms of what you can do. And we've had kind of people really unhappy, saying, you've done a bad job. And you're like, well, we can't do anything here. It's like, you need to.
You've done your best with what you're given.
Yeah, correct. And, what we have done in, previously is, we've just trying to move it up as much as we can, which is just for when they're in that static environment in the lab, and they're like, oh yeah, it's much better. And you say, okay, but then you need to get a new fork. There's only so much we can do here. And that I feel very sorry for people, because sometimes a bike shop just does that. We've had some cases where they've just slammed it, and they've, that's how it must be. And I do feel really sorry for some people when they just got the bike like that.
Any surprising thing a rider has done mid-fit?
Yeah, we've had some funny things. We've had, so obviously our stuff is, when you're in the facility and you're doing the fitment, it's the doors closed and it's super private. And with our 3D kinematics, it's obviously cameras and sensors. So the camera essentially picks up a luminescent pod and on a certain part of the body. And obviously, if there's other reflections being picked up, like say on the kit or something, we have to cover it. And we had this lady come, and she didn't have a cycling top, but she had like a t-shirt, and it had quite a lot of fluorescence on it, so it kind of caused chaos with our cameras. And we had said to her, we're having a bit of a problem here, and try to kind of find a solution. And she had said to us, don't worry. And she ripped her shirt off, and yeah, but she had nothing underneath it. And we were kind of like, there was 2 of us in the lab at the moment, and quickly turned around 180, and we had said like, hey, do you mind just putting your shirt back on? We'll find you something, a cycling shirt in the lab that we can give you. And but she was hell bent. She was like, no, I'm good to go. And I was like, like, please. And then, and then also just some, like, if an athlete has like a saddle sore, and we like, how bad is it at the moment? And we've had people just, rip off pants. Yeah, totally stripping. So, and then we've had some other weird things, but I think definitely that lady was definitely our weirdest moment, going forward.
Wow. Yeah, I wouldn't be ready for that either. Oh, that's funny.
Yeah. And then we asked her to go ride a few days, which she did. And then she came back, and we actually had another female in the lab at the time. We had said, hey, she's coming back. Would you mind just being here for when she comes back? But yeah, it was, it caught us both very much off guard, put it that way.
If you could give one piece of advice, coaching advice, what would it be? If
injuries from bad bike fits, there's quite a few. Obviously, one of the most common, I would say, injuries or discomforts that you have is saddle sores, especially if you're spending time on the bike. That is a very common injury or discomfort that we do find. And then it ranges everything from, lower back pain, shoulder pain, middle of your back pain, knee pain, in front and knee, in front and at the rear of the knee, femoral, patellofemoral pain, etc. So it ranges depending on kind of how that position that is on the bike affects the athlete. But yeah, there are definitely knock-on effects from injury prevention that you want to do by having a bad bike fit, or a fit that's not optimal.
It's a good piece of advice, and I'm hearing this more often now. Yeah. And last but not least, what are you riding these days? What is your favorite bike to ride?
My favorite bike at the moment is so Matthew Sauter and myself from Saffron Frames, we go back like 100 years, and he built me a gravel bike, a full custom gravel bike, and I must say it is, every time I ride it, it really is the best bike I've ever ridden. I really say that, like, also because I'm old, so I need a more chilled out bike. But at the moment I'm riding that, and then I also have like a specialized SL8, which I really do like. But I do feel really good when I ride the gravel bike. I think mainly because it is a bit more relaxed and chilled out, and everything that I do on it. So from that side, I'd probably say at the moment it's that. But I will say when I do ride my SL8, it is a really good bike to ride. So you kind of get two of the best, but I'd say probably now at the moment my gravel bike, my Saffron. Yeah.
Oh, nice. All right. Well, John, thank you so much for giving your time to chat with me. I will share with everyone the website for Science to Sport. And if there's anything else you want me to include, just let me know. And super thrilled that you made the time to chat with me. Thank you.
It's a pleasure. Thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.
And that's all for today's episode. I want to thank the listeners for tuning in. Your support means everything. If you enjoyed this episode, please consider following, leaving a review, and sharing it with your friends.